So my 2014 Sprinter finally hit 500,000 miles on it, and most people are sad and upset when the mileage goes up. I'm actually excited because this is a 2014, and the fact that it has 500,000 miles on it with the original engine and transmission, that's gotta say that this van is very reliable. And as long as you keep up with the maintenance, of course. And this is the reason for this video, is I'm gonna do a full fluid change on this van. This van's been working really hard for me lately. It used to be in service for expediting. I had multiple vans like this. This is my last one that I saved for myself just to do towing, like if I have to tow a trailer or a car or something like that. That's what I use it for, and lately it's been towing quite a bit. Like it brought the dyno home from Michigan, and it brought a couple cars. Like it brought this car here yesterday, and on my drive home from Knoxville is when the van hit 500,000 miles on it. So got a few boxes here. This is just the engine oil filter and 4 gallons of oil. It only takes about 12-13 quarts or so, but I usually just buy, you know, 4 gallons, and that way it comes out cheaper. You can buy this stuff. I use this Mobil 1 5W40 turbo diesel oil. It's been great for me. That's all I ran in all my vans, and that is why they have high miles and still run great. And this time I'm gonna do a motor flush. I don't know, some people say it's dumb, but I do it once in a while. All you do, I think it's just kerosene, and you just put this into your you just add this to your oil and idle the car or truck or van, whatever, for about 5 minutes, and then drain the oil. That sort of flushes everything out. I guess thins the oil more and flushes everything out, especially on the high mileage. I don't see why not. This is an oil filter, and this box just came today from Euro Parts SD. This company is located in San Diego, California, and this is the best website to use for Sprinter parts. Why I say that is because these are OEM parts, but at a very cheap price. Even after shipping, it was still a good deal for all of this. And what I have here is I have 2 quarts of differential fluid, and that's what these vans take, is exactly 2 quarts. So I'll be changing that. And I have transmission fluid. I should have, let's see, I should have about 8 quarts of that. Yep, so 8 quarts of transmission fluid. This is the stuff that is used by Mercedes. I mean, it's Mercedes brand. So, and all of this you can get off that website. I'll post it on the screen, and I'll put it in the description. This here is a transmission filter kit. So it comes with a new filter and a gasket. So on my vans, I did transmission flushes every 150 to 200,000 miles on it. But that's because these vans spent a lot of time on the highway. They were just driving across country, back and forth pretty much. So like the tires would last 150,000 miles on it. The brakes would last 200,000 miles on it, because, you know, the van's on the highway most of its life. It just lately I've been using it local and, you know, towing cars here and there. So it's getting more wear, and that's why I feel like replacing all these fluids. Also, I bought a gallon of coolant, so I'll go ahead and do a coolant flush as well. So I'm gonna start with you know, the basic engine oil replacement. So I'm gonna go ahead and pour this thing in the motor flush, which is kerosene, but I don't have any kerosene, so I buy this. And that's it. And then we're gonna idle it for about 5 minutes. Don't rev your car or truck or van, just idle it. So let's get to it. Okay, so the timer's going off. It's been 5 minutes exactly, and so it's time to just drain this oil and put some fresh oil in there and go to the next step. So what you need to do a engine oil change on a Sprinter is obviously oil, a filter that comes with the new O-ring for the filter housing, a filter socket. This is the one I use. You can see the part number on it. You actually have to put, you know, another socket on top of it. Some of them already have like a you know, 1/2 inch or 3/8 that you just put in there. This one is still uses a socket, which is no big deal. I got a 13mm socket to remove the drain bolt and a funnel to not make a mess when you're pouring oil in. So let's start draining this fluid. I gotta say though, for 500,000 miles, this undercarriage is pretty clean. I do see a slight power steering leak coming from the steering rack maybe, or one of the O-rings from the hoses or something, but it's a minor leak. I wouldn't even worry about it right now unless it gets any worse. But like, the oil pan is dry, everything else is dry under here, and it's looking good, except this oil is dark and it's not draining quick enough. It's about to start spilling. So while the oil is slowly draining, I'm just gonna let it drip. I'm gonna come up here and get to the oil filter, which is down here. So a lot of times I remove the air box anyways to replace the filter, or at least vacuum, because a lot of times there's like just rocks, or not rocks, but like just pieces of trash that end up in there. So I just vacuum it out if the filter's still pretty clean. But you just remove this box by unplugging 2 sensors, the positive cable for jumping the van, and then just pull up on that, pull this intake hose out of the way, and you need a flathead to loosen this clamp there. So let me get that taken out, and then you can just pry it on both sides here and it comes right out. Set that aside. So this here, this is, I guess, blow-by oil, and a lot of times this gasket here, or O-ring, it gets dry rotted over time, and I've replaced it on this van before, but it looks like it's probably time to replace it again. I'm not gonna do that now because I don't have one, but this is definitely something to replace in the future, because it gets all like loose and just starts seeping oil, which is not gonna leave you stranded or anything, but it'll keep the engine cleaner up here. But everything else is pretty dry. So I'm gonna pop this filter off and go from there. I like to remove the filter while the drain plug is still out, because when you take this off, the rest of the oil goes down and it will drain all the oil out. When you remove the filter housing, sometimes the filter stays on the housing, and at times like this, like in this case, it stayed on the engine still, so it's no big deal. It doesn't matter if it stays on there, just pull it out. But if you got the housing out, there's 2 O-rings that need to be replaced. Sometimes I change these O-rings every other oil change, but every filter comes with these O-rings, so might as well change them. I don't see why not. So with the new filter already on the housing, new O-rings, both of them I replaced. Now you can pull the old filter out, and I just put it inside the box so it's not dripping all over the place. And now you put a little bit of oil on both O-rings, and now you can screw it back in. Now it doesn't have to be like crazy tight, just enough to where you know, it's bottomed out, as you could say, because it's got O-rings, it's not gonna leak. And then just take the socket off, and that's it. Filters in. It's still dripping a little bit, but I don't have all day, so I'm just gonna go ahead and put the drain plug back in and pour the oil in, so we can move on to the next item. Some people in the comments may say that this is the wrong oil that I'm using, and that's just their personal opinion. I've been using this oil since 2014 on 5 Sprinter vans and never failed an engine. So I think this oil, it may not be that great for DEF systems, but I don't know what that is, because reasons. So this oil is actually really good for the engine. It may not be good for like the exhaust systems. So if you run a DEF exhaust still and DEF fluid, you probably want to go with a different oil, but this is what I use. It never failed me. So I just put about 12.5 quarts of Mobil 1 into the engine. We should be good. Once I'll check it at the very end when the van is flat to make sure it's leveled, but that's usually what I put in, about 12.5. If you do put a little bit too much, your cruise control won't work. So I think too much oil or low oil, your cruise control won't work, as a safety thing. So just keep that in mind. If your cruise control is not working, check your oil level. It's also a good idea to replace both belts and pulleys, and they sell like a full kit on that website that I'm going to post, and it comes with everything you need to replace the belts and pulleys. I just did these belts and pulleys not long ago, so I'm not gonna do that in this video. Also, I replaced the filters in the last videos, both of them, so I'm not gonna worry about that. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the air box back in and tighten everything up here and start draining the coolant. So to drain the coolant, just open the reservoir for air. Open that up, put the cap aside, and on the driver's side, bottom of the radiator, it's not going to be visible in the camera, but there is a drain plug, and what I do is I put a hose on it just to make it easier or cleaner process. And there's a knob you just turn that opens it's like a valve. You open the valve and it starts draining the coolant. Just make sure you open it all the way. And of course it's missing my drain bucket, but you can technically just open it without the hose. I just feel like this is cleaner. It's a cleaner process if you just put the hose on there and just wait till it drains. It's not gonna be quick, but it'll be done. That coolant looks weird. A lot of people say like, oh, you don't have to change the coolant, it's just water or whatever. It actually does a lot for an engine. It keeps the engine cooler and the engine will last longer, and you know, your water pump's just gonna last longer and stuff like that, because the coolant doesn't just cool the vehicle, it actually lubricates the pump as well. Maybe not on all vehicles, but in some of them it lubricates the pump. So change your coolant. So this step here is not necessary, but you get distilled water, the stuff you mix the coolant with anyways. And if you have an extra gallon just sitting around, just pour it through, let it flush it out a little bit more. You don't have to put much, like a half a gallon, and just let the clean water flow through. And as you can see, that coolant is just nasty. So once your coolant is done draining, go ahead and close the nozzle on the bottom of the radiator and pour your new coolant in. This system holds about 2 gallons, so you put a gallon of coolant, that's not diluted, and then you just put another gallon of distilled water and you're all set. So let's do it. Some people like to mix it in a bucket and stuff, but I don't think that's necessary. It'll just mix itself once you start the engine. So okay, we should be good there. I'll check the level at the end as well. I'll just check all the fluid levels at the very end, but it's a little bit above max right now. So one more thing I wanted to do up here is drain the power steering fluid, because the pumps for these 3.0 V6 diesels, they're not horrible, they're not that crazy expensive like on the 4-cylinder Sprinters, but they're still like 240, 250 bucks. And just by changing the fluid, you know, for 20 bucks, you can save a pump and labor and stuff like that. Power steering reservoir is located on the driver's side, and the cap actually has a dipstick. So that is how you check it. It has the hot and cold levels and all of that. So the level is good now. Actually, the fluid looks pretty good too, but I'm gonna drain it anyways. I have plenty of it. So what I do is, on the driver front, the pump is located to about midway on the engine. So I just loosen up the hose. You won't be able to see it from up here, but you just loosen it. I think it's an 18 millimeter, and you loosen it and just remove it, and that'll drain most of the fluid that way. It creates a mess because it goes everywhere, but it's okay. I'm gonna pressure wash the engine anyways. The fluid actually doesn't look bad, but doesn't hurt to replace it. Once it's done dripping, you can put the hose back on and tighten it. It is an O-ring seal, so it doesn't have to be super tight. But I don't have the actual Mercedes brand power steering fluid here, but one of these will work. I believe this came off the europartssd.com. I got it a while ago. I think it's the same as the Mercedes brand, just in a different bottle. It's this brand here. But if you don't have that, they sell at local parts stores like O'Reilly's, and I'm sure other parts stores have them as well. It's just basically like hydraulic fluid, sort of power steering hydraulic fluid, oil, and either one will work. I think I should have enough of this to fill it up. It doesn't take much, so I'll put this, and if I'm short, then I'll top it off a little bit with that. Don't like to mix it, but I totally forgot to order it because I had, you know, luckily I had this in stock, and I want to get it done. I want to replace all the fluids in this vehicle, well, besides brake fluid, I guess. But let me fill it up and we'll go from there. So it only took about 400 milliliters, I guess that is, to fill it, and I did put a little bit too much. The level is slightly higher, but that's okay, because once I start it and turn the wheel, the level will drop, because I'm sure there's a few air bubbles here and there, so the level will drop. So it'll be a perfect level, but once again, I'll check all the fluids at the end to make sure they're at the proper level. So going underneath the van, I was looking around and stuff, inspecting the drive shaft, and my drive shaft is busted. I did feel a vibration from like 0 to 15 to 20 miles an hour, but it was like minor. I didn't really worry about it, but this is where it's coming from. And also I think the transmission mount is probably shot. That may have caused that, or who knows, you know, the van has 500,000 miles on it. So I mean, I know on this one I replaced the rear section of the drive shaft before with the used one, but the front section is still original. So luckily I have a full aftermarket drive shaft that I had for a while, and I didn't know what to do with it, but now I do. I'm gonna put it on here and I'm gonna replace the whole thing. So first I want to remove this cross frame that holds the transmission mount, get that out of the way. Either way I gotta replace the transmission mount. So it's only 2 bolts on each side to remove this crossbar, and then just detach the transmission mount. But I'm gonna put a jack up here on the drive shaft to hold it up for now. So let's get to work. Okay, so 13 mil is the size for these transmission mount bolts. There's 4 of them. Once you remove those, you can lift up the transmission just to take it off this crossbar. I don't know if this needs to be removed if you're just doing the transmission fluid replacement. Like if you're removing the oil pan, the transmission pan. But I'm removing it for a few reasons, because I want to replace the transmission mount, and then I'll have to replace the drive shaft. And it'll be easier to get this out of the way to get the pan down, because you sort of have to like mess with it back and forth. So this will just give me more room. So there's 2 bolts on each side, like I said, and you can remove this whole crossbar. Right now the transmission is held by the OEM jack that comes with the vans. So as you can see, I'm doing all this in the driveway. So just with basic tools you can replace all the fluids yourself and save a bunch of money. This is probably gonna cost me altogether less than 500 bucks in fluids and parts. But you know, like, it would be a lot more if you just went and did it at the dealership. I'm guessing probably like over 2,000. So 16 mil is the size for these bolts and nuts. You have to, the bolts from the bottom and the nuts from the top, you have to hold it with a wrench. Okay, I need a bigger impact. Sometimes you just gotta get the big boy out to get the job done. If it doesn't remove it, it'll snap it off. There we go. So here's the deal with transmission fluid replacement on these vans and some of the other vehicles. Basically, when you drain it, the transmission holds about 9 quarts. So when you drain it from the pan, only half of it comes out. So about 4 to 4.5 quarts comes out. So the way I do it, I'm sure there's other ways to do it. The way I do it is I take the plug out, I drain the fluid, I take the pan off, I replace the filter, and I clean the inside of the pan, the magnets. There's a few magnets, I believe, if I remember correctly. I clean those up. I clean the pan really good with some brake fluid, dry it up, put the new gasket on, I reassemble it, put 4.5 quarts in, and then I run the van. You can either idle it, switch it from gear to gear, just run it for a few minutes, let the oil cycle, and then just do another drain from the plug. Just drain and fill. So drain 4.5, fill 4.5. And I do have a dipstick to check the level. So those you have to buy separate. So the way it works is there's a cap. Here's a new tab that comes with the kit as well. That tab breaks every time you pop the cap off for the transmission. You probably can't see it, but there's a cap here. That red tab, you have to snap it off. I mean, sometimes you can remove it without breaking it, but most of the time it breaks. So when you break it off, the tab off, you push this red thing through, and that's how it unlocks this cap. This cap is where the dipstick goes, and that's how you fill the transmission fluid. And so I broke the top of this cap off already, and the kit comes with a new one. So once you have the level right, you just put this original cap back on and put the new red tab in, and that seals the transmission. So nobody can mess with it and the water gets in. Technically, you don't need that. You could just put this cap back on. It'll stay on. It's got an O-ring, but that locks it to where if somebody was to tamper with it, you would know. Like, that's just like an OEM way of sealing it back up. Okay, so the drain plug is right here on the transmission pan. So you just want to remove that and get the fluid draining. And it's supposed to be like a darker red. Let's see what it looks like. Oh, I mean, I've seen it worse. This isn't that bad. It is dark, but I've seen it worse. So when it gets dark like that, a little bit of metal flakes are floating around probably, and what happens is the transmission could start slipping, and so this is a good time to change it. Also, the filter gets clogged up, and over time those filters, I think they fall apart. I don't know about the newer ones, but on some of the older Mercedeses, those filters are paper and they fall apart and they clog up the whole transmission, and then it starts slipping and missing gears and all of that. So it's just it's a good thing to do, is replace the fluids in time. So it seems like it's expensive to replace the fluid, but you're actually saving money in the long run. So keep that in mind. So I'm going to put the drain plug back in the pan and remove the oil pan completely off, just so I can clean it up, one thing, and second reason is so I can replace the filter, transmission filter. So be careful with this because it's easy to strip. So if you strip it, you'll have to probably replace the pan, unless you want to cut some new threads or something. Just, I wouldn't do that. And I guess now we can start removing all these bolts. See, there's still a bunch of oil in this pan, even though we drained it through the plug. A lot of oil stays behind. So just to drain and fill is almost useless. You want to get all that oil out. All of it. And there's the filter. Filter just comes off just like that. Let me clean my hands up and we'll clean the pan and everything. And I usually don't, but I think this time I'm gonna spray brake cleaner all up in here, just to get any kind of look at that. Look, my finger is clean. Well, sort of clean. And I'm gonna just wipe it right here. Look at that. So all of that needs to be cleaned off. And before assembly, I'm just gonna try brake cleaner. It should work. I don't see why not. It should clean things up really nice. By the way, this transmission had no issues at all. I'm just doing this just to prevent any issues in the future. So if you do have a problem with your transmission where it's slipping, this might help, but it might not. So it's worth a try. If you're already slipping or you have transmission issues, it's worth a try, but I don't think it's a 50-50 chance that it's gonna help you. And if it does help, it may be just temporary. So this one didn't have any issues. I'm just doing it just to prevent issues for future. So while I was waiting for the transmission to drain, I actually went and checked my used inventory. And I have a front section of a low miles van that I had for parts before. So I'm kind of glad I don't have to use this aftermarket full assembly. I'm just gonna replace this front section because it's got less than 100,000 miles on this front section. So I'd rather have the OEM. And so if anybody needs an aftermarket full drive shaft for a 170-inch wheelbase Sprinter van, I think they fit from like 2007 up to 2021. Let me know, and I'll get it to you. I know these things were hard to find at one point, and this is why I bought one, just to have on hand just for emergencies. But I don't think I will need it because I will be selling this van most likely. So I'm sure somebody out there can use it. I don't know what the price will be, so just hit me up on Instagram or something and we'll figure something out. So here's what the oil pan looks like on the inside. I thought it was a few magnets, but it's actually just one magnet, and it's filled with metal flakes. But I mean, this is not like crazy metal, this is normal. So you just have to clean all of this out, make it spotless, and dry it up. You can use brake cleaner or something like that. Clean the magnet, put it back in the same exact place though, so just remember where it was, put it back in the same place, replace the gasket, and go from there. One tip I will give is sometimes these gaskets, the way they're packaged is they're like rolled up. So before you even start the job, lay it out flat in the sun so it straightens out. One time I got it pinched to where I couldn't even use it. Like it just, like every time I tightened the oil pan up, it kept pinching it, so I had a leak, and I ended up putting the original one back on, which you can reuse the gasket, but if it comes with the kit, you might as well use a new one. You know, it's I don't remember what this kit was, but just look it up on their website. I'll post it up, and I'll have the website in the description as well. So brake cleaner was a success. That thing looks brand new. Don't forget to install your filter. Hey dude. Hey. Here's what the pan looks like. If your pan is like rusted and stuff from the other side, mine's starting to rust, but it's still good. If yours is rusted pretty bad, I would replace it probably while you're doing this. The magnet's back into place, clean, everything's clean. Let's put it back on. Okay, so the pan's back on. All the bolts are tight on the pan. I'm gonna go ahead and swap out this transmission mount. Just 2 bolts, one on each side. I don't remember where I bought this transmission mount, but they're not expensive, and you can even buy a set with like the transmission mount and the engine mounts, probably for like $100 or less. But definitely a good thing I had it. at home already, because once I put this used piece of drive shaft on, it'll be good for a long time, because the rear section has low miles and the front section has low miles. The middle section, I don't think it's stressed out as much, but I've been feeling some kind of vibration for a little bit, and now I know exactly what it was. So I'm kind of glad I'm doing this, because now it's gonna be smooth as can be. So to fill the transmission, I made this funnel with a clear hose. Not sure what size hose this is, but it fits right into the dipstick hole on the transmission, and it seals it, because one thing you want to do is pour this fluid in slowly, otherwise it's just gonna back up on you. So let's start pouring. So this is quart number 4, the last of it. I just want to show what the color is supposed to look like. It's like bright red, and you could see what came out of it was a dark, very, very dark red, which is not horrible. There was no metal flakes, just the normal stuff on the magnet. So this transmission is looking good. So now I'm gonna start the van, go through the gears, let it run for a few minutes, and then drain it and refill it again, and that'll be sort of a flush of the transmission. So let's do it. So let's drain this fluid one more time from the transmission. That's just the AC dripping, because I had it running for about 10 minutes and the AC condensation is dripping. Let's see what this oil looks like now. Oh yeah, that's clean. That is clean. Alright, so plug back in. I'm gonna fill it with about 4 to 4.5 quarts, and that'll be it for the transmission flush. And obviously I'm gonna reassemble it here and replace this front drive shaft. I'm not gonna record that. And then one last thing is the rear diff fluid replacement, which is easy, so we'll save that for last, and that'll be it. This video is going to be super long. If you're still watching, you're awesome. So we're down to the last fluid replacement, which is the rear diff. I put this side on the ramp just so the van is more tilted to that side where the drain plug is. So let's get under here. This is probably the easiest fluid replacement, because there's a drain plug on the passenger side on the rear diff there, and the fill is just a rubber piece that you pull off with your fingers, or you can get a screwdriver and just pry that out. So there's the plug. Remove that first for air. Then you can remove this plug with the impact, but definitely don't put it back in with the impact. Doesn't look bad. There's no metal, which is good. I don't think it's been that long since I replaced it in this van. I just wanted to do it all in once, since it's 500,000 mile mark. So it's like a celebration for the van. Now you just tighten the plug back up. Don't use that impact to tighten it. That's probably good right there. Alright, and now I just fill it. All I do is, you can pump it in there, or I just take a funnel like this and slowly pour it. It's a little bit thick, so pour it slow so it doesn't overfill. You can do that to the funnel. So that's it. And then you pour it in until it actually starts pouring out. So I will probably take it off the ramp so it's more level, and then pour it in. And that's gonna be it in this video. Hopefully this video helps someone do maintenance on their Sprinter vans or other cars. Like there's a ML 350, has the same engine and most likely same transmission as a Sprinter, so most of these things are exactly the same on most of the cars. So just do your maintenance and stick with the proper oil and fluids, and your car will run forever. So until next time, later. Oh, this thing drives so smooth now. That little vibration that I talked about was that front drive shaft that needed to be replaced. So that used piece made this thing drive as smooth as possible at 500,000 miles. Like, this thing drives so good. It runs smooth now, shifts even smoother than before. Fresh fluids does a lot to a vehicle. Okay, until next time, this time for real. Later.